How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Greetings, conversationalists across the fruited plain. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here, and I'm delighted to have you. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, don't forget to text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. I want to play a game. Can you spot the pattern? Can you spot the pattern? It's actually necessary. And I want to thank Robert. Robert probably doesn't want to be thanked. Robert is a progressive troll. Robert came after me yesterday because I said that restaurant reservations in the District of Columbia were up since President Trump cracked down on crime. And Robert insisted that I was lying, that wasn't true, that he read about it in the New York Times. He saw people talk about it on MSNBC, that actually restaurant reservations had collapsed in Washington, D.C., and I was a liar. Robert is one of those progressives who gets his news from MSNBC and left-wing outfits, and Robert is regularly lied to. And Robert doesn't even realize he is being lied to by the American press corps. Yet Robert has been lied to. Peter Baker at the New York Times was one of the most prominent reporters to advance the story from a local TV station in Washington, D.C., that restaurant reservations were down 25% since Donald Trump cracked down on crime in Washington. That was the story in Washington at the local TV station, that restaurant reservations were down 25%. And Peter Baker pushed this story out on social media. It was talked about on left-wing news channels. Robert, the left-wing troll, heard about it. He got mad at me and insisted I was lying to my listeners by saying that restaurant reservations were up in Washington. Robert, I was right, and Peter Baker of the New York Times and the other media outlets were wrong. You see, the reason reservations were down is because last year in Washington, D.C., it was Restaurant Week. And you had a massive number of people getting reservations at restaurants to participate in Restaurant Week. And Restaurant Week was not this past week in Washington, D.C. this year. And what the local media outlet did is they looked at all the reservations in restaurants last year from some of the open resources out there like Open Table and the like. And they saw that last week, you had X number of reservations at restaurants. And this year you had a 25% decline. And look. They were wrong. They forgot. In fact, the local news station that started this all has now retracted their story and noted it's actually a 30% increase in reservations for restaurants when you factor out Restaurant Week and the participating restaurants in D.C. last year. 30% increase in reservations. I was right. They were wrong. And this left-wing troll who came after me insisting I was lying and needed to correct the record. Well, I've corrected the record for you, sir, but my audience was not lied to. You were lied to. Isn't it funny how the lie benefited the left-wing talking points? Last year, The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, USA Today, the Seattle Times, the Denver Post all ran stories about an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado that Donald Trump highlighted, Fox News highlighted. They interviewed residents of the apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado, who were scared to death. It was a dilapidated old apartment complex. A lot of people were trying to move out of the apartment complex. They were poor. They were on government assistance, and Trinidad, the violent gang from Venezuela, had taken over. And there were home surveillance footage of men in the hallways with machine guns, not semi-automatic rifles, but automatic machine guns. And these news outlets insisted when Donald Trump highlighted this on the campaign trail and actually did a campaign event in Aurora, Colorado, that he was a lying racist and he was trying to stir up already heightened tensions over illegal immigration, and he was misrepresenting the situation, and it simply was not true. National media outlets insisted that there was not a problem, but it wasn't just national media outlets. It was also Democrats. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris denounced Donald Trump for making this attack. The local politicians in Denver and Aurora, Colorado did. The governor of Colorado did. They all said what Donald Trump was saying was simply not true, and Donald Trump was heightening tensions that already existed in this immigrant community and making matters worse. The New York Times did a big story about, well, it's complicated. Here's what's not complicated. Yesterday, the Department of Justice indicted 28 of the Trinidad gang members who lived in that apartment complex for narco trafficking, human trafficking, gun violence, sales of illegal guns, attempted murder, and a bunch of other crimes. 28 people in a single apartment complex were indicted by a federal grand jury in Colorado for a host, like 30-some crimes. 2 additional people who didn't live in the apartment complex but were actually controlling the violence at the apartment complex were also arrested and indicted. This is beyond an arrest. This is a federal indictment from a grand jury. It's not Pam Bondi just issuing charges. It's a federal grand jury that spent 9 months investigating what was going on, and they've indicted these people, and yet major national media outlets last year insisted there was not a problem. It's completely unrelated from restaurant reservations in Washington, D.C., except for one thing. The mistake was designed to make the Republicans look bad and the Democrats look like truth tellers. The mistakes always go one way. Multiple media outlets led by the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, 2 days ago, ran a story about a woman from Gaza who starved to death on Israel's watch. They have since retracted the story. She had leukemia, advanced leukemia, and had a heart attack. It was Israel that actually rescued her and got her to Europe for medical treatment before she died. But the initial story was that she was just another victim of the Israeli genocide. The story, the mistake, goes one way. This comes a week after a story about a child featured on the New York Times who was starved to death by the Israelis, and it turns out he had a severe birth defect and other health abnormalities, and he wasn't actually starved to death. He was dying because of congenital birth defects. The mistakes go one way. This came weeks after a story about Israel firing on starving Gazans who were in a food line who wanted help, and it turns out it was Hamas firing on them, not Israel. And that story incited a man in Boulder, Colorado to go out and gun down or fire, they use a homemade flamethrower and burn up Jewish supporters of Israel at a regular protest. He killed a Holocaust survivor. After hearing the story in the media, that only after he killed a Holocaust survivor did the media say, oops, our bad, wrong. Turns out it wasn't Israel. The mistakes always go one way. Anti-Israel, anti-Republican, all the mistakes, all the time, go to advance progressive talking points. Every single person listening to me right now has another example of the media making an egregious mistake to make the right look bad. And it happens about Donald Trump all the time. You know, I have a rule on my program now where if there's a big salacious story about Donald Trump in the press, I wait 24 to 48 hours before talking about it, much to the chagrin of some, because I know 9 times out of 10 it's going to be retracted. Like, for example, the story about Intel and the government wanting control of Intel, 10% of Intel stock. I waited to bring that story up till it was confirmed that it was actually something the Trump government wanted, and Howard Lutnick went on CNBC to say as much, and I think that's bad, and that's not a mistake, but it was a big story. It's like, I got to wait and see if this is real. Because there are ample stories about Donald Trump in the press that simply turn out not to be true, and the press runs with these stories. Remember back during Trump's first term, CNN ran a very salacious story about how James Comey was going to go testify in Congress about collusion with Russia or some such, or the Trump administration trying to pressure people in government to cover something up, and it turned out not to be true. It wasn't in his testimony. The mistakes always run one way, always to advance the left. And they're willing to cover stories up. They're willing to leave details out. Think about the Maryland man who was sent to El Salvador. Maryland father sent to El Salvador. Wasn't really a mistake. It was a willful leaving out of key details. He was not just a Maryland father. He was an illegal alien from El Salvador who went to Maryland, who the government believed might be tied to MS-13. They left out the key details. There was one a week or so ago about an Illinois man who was rounded up by the government. It turns out he, too, was an illegal alien. When they leave out key facts, it's designed to shape a story to benefit progressives. Now, here's the thing. You and I, we all know that this sort of stuff happens. But the press is actually in decline. The number of people who watch the news is in decline. The number of people who subscribe to newspapers is in decline. The number of people who get their news from alternative sources is actually on the rise. And oftentimes, unfortunately, it's grifters and charlatans taking advantage of it and starting news services for people who now, because of the internet, have lost their ability to discern and just tells them what they want to hear and tells them oftentimes stuff that's not true. There's a very prominent social media account yesterday showing a group of African immigrants who were trying to get to Italy. And as they were approaching the Italian coast, their ship overturned and a lot of people died. You could actually see the video of this ship, and it had like hundreds of people. I mean, there was no room to even walk on the ship, and it was starting to sink under the weight of people. As it got to Italy, it was taking on water, and it actually turned out to be a video from the Democratic Republic of Congo multiple years ago. There are people who want to tickle your ears. There are people who want to lie to you. There are people like Tucker Carlson now willing to platform people who want to rewrite history and make Winston Churchill the monster of World War II and Adolf Hitler was just misunderstood. It's happening on the right. It is. The people on the right who are doing this wouldn't have license or ability or room to do it but for the national mainstream media becoming so captured by the left and willing to lie to advance the left's agenda, willing to get stories wrong to advance the left's agenda. The left in the National Press Corps created the environment by which you can now be lied to by people on the right because the press decided to stop telling the whole story. They leave out details that might hurt the left. They shade details to benefit the left, and they're willing to make mistakes that always benefit the left. It is the National Press Corps that has created the environment. The very people who complain about disinformation and misinformation are the ones who give us so much misinformation and disinformation. They've opened the floodgates to others to do the same. And now their reaction is, how dare you do what we're experts at? And they've got a suicide wish. They actually don't want to fix themselves. Look at the Washington Post. Jeff Bezos starts cracking down on the liars at the Washington Post who are deeply pro-terrorist, deeply pro-Hamas, and they start flooding. They start taking early retirement and leaving. Because what does he want them to do? He wants them to take the side that is pro-America, pro-freedom, pro-democracy. You're like, well, I'm not writing pro-democracy stuff. I'm just writing that the Democrats are the Democratic Party, and so anything against the Democrats is a threat to democracy. I mean, that is kind of it, too, that anything that impacts the Democrats is a threat to democracy. Rewriting congressional districts is a threat to democracy unless the Democrats do it. The press created the environment by which all these grifters and charlatans can stand up and take advantage of you because the press has been taking advantage of you. The mistakes they make always, without fault, always benefit the left. And that should tell them something, but they already know it and don't care. Greetings, conversationalists. How are you? It's Eric Erickson here, 877-973-7425. Let's go to Scott. Welcome to the show, Scott. How are you?
Hey, Eric. How you doing today?
Great. What's going on?
Hey, I just wanted to say I think I got a solution to the Ukraine war. I think they should use the Korean War plan like they did in 1953, because this war is so similar to the Korean War. It's just that to set up a DMZ, that land that Putin Zelensky's fighting over, is set up a DMZ and put the UN troops in there instead of NATO or any other.
Well, I'm glad you called on this issue, Scott, because, the president is now making clear he doesn't want boots on the ground from the United States, but he is willing to have American air support to support European boots on the ground. And he's asked the Joint Chiefs of Staff to draw up a plan that would allow American air support to help European troops stationed in Ukraine to keep a future Russian invasion from happening. Now, when I come back, Scott, stick around for me, and thanks for the phone call, because I actually had an epiphany this morning. I actually think perhaps Donald Trump is a little more wily than people have wanted to acknowledge when it comes to dealing with Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. And there's a key point. I was doing some reading last night. I know, big mistake. And it dawned on me, I think we've probably missed a point in where the president is headed with this, even as now the left is up in arms again, and a lot of the foreign policy establishment is up in arms today about the president yet again attacking Zelensky, saying Ukraine's going to need to come to terms with losing territory and the like. And the Russians actually, this isn't a war over territory for the Russians. And we, I think, miss that this isn't actually a war over territory from the Russian perspective. So when we come back, I want to give those of you who hate the president a little bit of perspective. And you can say it's by accident. You can say it's the people whispering in his ear. It's not really him, except he's the one who has done something that no one else has done. I'm not going to give it away, but it just gives me a little more appreciation for Trumpian foreign policy. I want to talk to you, though, about Hillsdale College right now. If you go to ericforhillsdale.com, you can take a free class from Hillsdale College on the Federalist Papers. My son is in A-Push, they call it, AP U.S. History, and he's about to do a deep dive into the Federalist Papers. I'm like, buddy, I need to sign you up for these. They're 30-minute lectures by one of the best professors at Hillsdale College on the Federalist Papers. I think it's 7 to 10 episodes on the writings of the Federalist Papers. Really good stuff. But they've also got them on chemistry and economics and history and literature and religion and philosophy. You name it, they got it. 40 different classes to choose from at no cost to you. They're each, it depends on the class how many episodes there are, but they're all about 30-minute long videos. You do them at your own pace, at no charge from Hillsdale College. Improve your mind on a subject you care about with Hillsdale. All you do is go to Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. You sign up with Hillsdale College today. Take one of these great classes. The Federalist Papers is a great one to start at. ericforhillsdale.com. Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, don't forget to text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. If you're new to the show, what happens when you text Eric to 33777 is I send you back a number of links. It's actually the computer got it set up automatically. The very first link is the show notes. Every day we send out the show notes. When the show starts, all the stuff I'm going to talk about, all the links plus more. It's a deep dive into the news you need to know today. And you can actually get a discount on that daily email by clicking that top link. And then you also get a link to the podcast. We have a 24/7 stream where anytime you load it, there I am talking. You got links to Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. They're all there for you to keep up with me and the show and everything going on. Just text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Now, a funny thing happens to me in particular. I've talked to a number of friends of mine in conservative circles, Trump circles, and the like, and the consensus is generally it happens to me more than most people. And I know why it happens to me more than most people. Because I am the guy who mainlined the term never Trump. In 2016, I remember where I was. I was on a train from New York to Washington on a book tour, and I wrote a piece saying I would never vote for Donald Trump. And my buddy Aaron texted me and said, you need to actually change it to hashtag never Trump that I am seeing people use on Twitter. I did, and the term exploded. I wasn't the originator of it, but I was the one who mainlined it. And that post took off furiously in 2016. I said, look, I think the guy is a liberal Democrat. He was a Clinton supporter. He's a donor to Pelosi and Schumer. I'm not going to support him. And I didn't in 2016. I mean, my kids were beat up and harassed, and my daughter was harassed horribly. We had people show up at our home to threaten us, and I dug my heels in and said, no, I don't think this guy is good. I still, to this day, have problems with his character. But in 2020, I was like, you know what? He wasn't the person I thought he was. I would rather him than Joe Biden. I'm going to support Trump. And then we had this odd relationship where he would randomly start calling me. And in 2020, where I guess it was, it was his reelection in 2020. 2021, I said I didn't think the election was stolen as he claims, and got a lot of hate for that. We haven't actually had a long conversation in quite a while on the phone, but I supported him in 2024. He's mad at me. He doesn't view me as a loyalist, and I'm not. I am perfectly willing to criticize him over tariffs, over wanting a stake in Intel. I am perfectly willing to criticize the things Donald Trump does. However, I supported Trump in 2020. I supported him in 2024. I am willing to defend what I think is a good policy of his. I'm willing to defend his handling of Ukraine. I'm willing to defend his tax cut plan. I'm willing to defend the crime crackdown. I'm willing to defend how he's handling illegal aliens. If I like what he's doing, I say so. If I don't like it, I say so. And that puts me in a weird position with people within the Trump administration where I have a lot of friends, because by design, it's the Trump administration. In order to try to get people into the circle, they want people to affirm everything. And I refuse to go there. And I've never been that way. I've never been a tribalist. I always believe I should tell the truth, even if people on my side get mad at me. And there are a lot of people on my side who tell me I'm not telling the truth because everyone else in the tribe says something. I'm like, no, I know I'm telling you the truth as best I can. But because I'm not affirming him, I kind of get excluded. Other people get way more access to me, and I'm fine with that. I don't like the access anyway. I mean, anyone who knows me, you come to my office, you're not going to see the me wall with me shaking hands with politicians. You're not going to see me going to the meetings and doing my radio. And first of all, that's not how I do radio. Like, if you listen to the program, I don't do a lot of interviews by design because we have enough research to show that you guys don't like it when I do interviews. There are very few exceptions. If it's a sitting politician of some prominence, like if Donald Trump wanted to call in, I would gladly do it, but he won't with me because I'm not a sycophant, and that's fine. I wear it as a badge of honor. But because of all of this, and I realize this isn't really a patting me on the back, it's to explain the weird situation I'm in, where when I do praise Donald Trump and use my platform to affirm what he's doing, I get intensely passionate and personal hate mail from people who feel like I am betraying them for having the audacity to defend Donald Trump. When I criticize Donald Trump, I get passionate, personally invective hate mail from people who think I'm betraying them. And part of that is because I try to be as relational as I am. I mean, y'all, any of you who listen now who have met me in real life know I am the exact same person. I'm not playing a character on radio like a lot of people do. I am me, middle-aged fat white guy who likes to eat, and I sit around and drink bourbon and smoke cigars and talk to y'all about politics, the news, and life. I am who I am. I don't pretend to be a character, and people have this relation with me through radio. I mean, I get invited to funerals for listeners and weddings. I'm not making that up. I say all of that to say I hesitate to go down the road I'm about to go down, but I need to go down this road because I know what's going to happen by by people who think I'm their friend, and I am about to be the turd in their punch bowl for the day because I'm about to praise Donald Trump in a way that they're going to be infuriated by. Because where are we with Ukraine? Donald Trump is a fool. He is in Putin's pocket. He is undermining Ukraine. I think Donald Trump is being far more wily than people give him credit for when it comes to Ukraine. First of all, I recognize, because I actually am one of the people who I read Art of the Deal when it came out back in the day. When I was a kid, I was interested in business. Donald Trump has been puffing up Vladimir Putin because he wants Putin to see that he's not Joe Biden and that he can get a fair hearing from Donald Trump. And part of the way Trump does this in negotiations is he vilifies the other side. Like, the Ukrainians need us. The Ukrainians have to have us. So Donald Trump can be as disparaging to Zelensky as Donald Trump wants to be, knowing he's not going to sever ties with Ukraine because Ukraine needs us. We don't need Ukraine. So he can do whatever he wants to do to Ukraine as a way to show Russia that, I'm willing to give you a fair hearing. I'm willing for you to come sit at the table. I'm willing to hear from you. And what happened? For the first time since Barack Obama was president, the Russian president met face-to-face, one-on-one with the American president. You may hate it. You may not like it, but it's Donald Trump. It's what he does. But in the process, you may not be paying attention to something Donald Trump has done. Donald Trump wants Vladimir Putin to sit face-to-face with Volodymyr Zelensky. You may say that's not a big deal, except it's a very, very, very big deal. And here's why. The Russians are not in this war for territory. I know to us, and what you're hearing from Trump is this about territory. But if you listen to the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, he just gave an interview the other day where he made it very clear. This isn't about a war for territory. This is about the illegitimacy of the Ukrainian government. From the very start of the war, what has Vladimir Putin said? That Ukraine had to be invaded because the Nazis have taken over. Now, you and I may look on Ukraine and say, the Nazis, this is nuts. But in Russia, given World War II's history in Russia and the invasion of Hitler into Russia, remaking Napoleon's mistakes, the Nazis may be the kissing cousins of the Soviets, but to Soviet and now Russian propaganda, the Nazis are the devil themselves. And to say that the Ukrainian leadership are Nazis is to say that there can be no negotiation. They're illegitimate. So Vladimir Putin starts a war and says the Ukrainian government are Nazis. They're illegitimate. We must get rid of this illegitimate Nazi government. The foreign minister yesterday gives an interview and says this is not a war over territory. It's about the illegitimacy of the Ukrainian government. We cannot deal with these illegitimate people. Along comes Donald Trump, who everyone thinks is a bumbling idiot, and says, hey, I would love for you guys to get face-to-face. Let's solve this. How can Vladimir Putin sit in a room and treat as an equal a man he believes is an illegitimate Nazi? He can't. He can't do it. No leader of any nation will sit in a room and treat someone as an equal who he believes is an illegitimate, inferior Nazi. You're not going to do it. You're not going to give him, because if Vladimir Putin sits in a room and has a face-to-face meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, what has he just done? He has legitimized the president of Ukraine. He has legitimized the positions of Ukraine. He has legitimized the counter-arguments of Ukraine. If he sits down in a meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, suddenly the man he says is an illegitimate usurper becomes legitimized by the very act of the president of the Russian Federation sitting with him to discuss peace terms. And that's what Donald Trump says he wants. And if Donald Trump doesn't get it, well, then what's he going to do? He's going to arm up the Ukrainians to continue fighting the war, realizing Putin doesn't want peace. He's just put Putin in a no-win situation. Either he sits with Ukraine's president and legitimizes him, or he refused to, which gives Donald Trump license to fund the Ukrainians. Putin has been negotiating and navigating this entire path to keep us on the sidelines, to keep us from engaging. We can sell some arms to NATO and they can give them to Ukraine, but we can kind of restrict what they're doing and which arms we're selling, and we can drag this out, and we can put the Ukrainians in a position to have to negotiate with the Russians. And all Trump said is, hey, I want you, Vladimir, to sit down with Volodymyr. Volodymyr, sit down, have a conversation. Let's end this thing. Let's have peace. But that's because Donald Trump treats Zelensky as the legitimate leader of Ukraine, and the entire war from Russia's perspective has been premised on the idea that this is an illegitimate government of Nazis that must be overthrown. It's not about conquering territory. It's about wiping out the Ukrainian regime that are illegitimate Nazis. You can't have Vladimir sit with Volodymyr without it legitimizing Volodymyr in his positions. You cannot do it. And yet now Donald Trump has structured this thing in such a way that that's what must be done, or the United States doubles down on security guarantees for Ukraine. So what's Putin going to do? Putin doesn't want an end to the war. The entirety of the American foreign policy establishment thinks Donald Trump is a bumbling idiot who just, when he does stuff like this, he wanders into it by like, okay, you know what, for the sake of argument, just for the sake of argument, let's say he stumbled into this position by blind luck. He didn't mean it. It wasn't calculating, whatever. It's where he needed to be. So let's say it's God's providential hand then guiding Donald Trump. Oh, you don't like that either, do you? Maybe, just maybe, Trump sees something that the foreign policy establishment does not see. Like moving the embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, where every American president promised to do it, and then they never did because they're like, oh, we don't want to start a war. And Trump's like, let's see if we start a war. Guess what? We didn't. Getting out of the Paris Climate Accord. It's going to be the end of the world. Is it? We're still here. Killing Qasem Soleimani, bombing Iran. The foreign policy consensus, if anything, has gotten kind of stale. The fancy word I use, sclerotic. It's hardened and it's not good. And Trump keeps shaking up and challenging the foreign policy establishment. But in the process, Trump had to do something. He had to box Putin in to giving legitimacy to Ukraine. And if they don't give Ukraine the legitimacy of meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, that's the biggest signal yet to Donald Trump. The Russians aren't really committed to peace, and you've tried everything you can. And so now let's just get on to killing the Russians. Trump did this, not the intelligentsia of the foreign policy community. Now, let me tell you about Swiss America. If you're in the process of, protecting your hard-earned assets, they've been warning people about a secret war on cash, and they would love to be able to help you. All you have to do is go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK, and get their report, The Secret War on Cash. You can also call them. The report is completely free. Swiss America has been helping Americans protect their assets for a while now. 40 years, they've been the nation's leader in precious metals. And their report takes less than 15 minutes to read, and it shows how the government's trying to steer and curb your spending behaviors when it comes to cash and anonymous purchases. By the way, that includes cryptocurrency. Find out more with their report, The Secret War on Cash. You go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric today, or call or text my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646. When you call 800-289-2646, just tell them Eric Erickson sent you, or just text Eric, ERICK, to 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. Let Swiss America help you. Message and data rates may apply. Hello, America. It is Eric Erickson here. I want to jump to the phones here, 877-973-7425. Let's go to Pierce. You're up first. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Eric. How are you today?
Great. What's going on?
Well, I've been thinking about this whole peace agreement that's coming up with the Russian-Ukraine war. And with the security being offered by the European Union nations under the Article 5 of NATO's agreements, defense agreement. But NATO could still kind of, if Russia got real aggressive and decided to move into Ukraine again, I wonder if NATO could actually back out of that, and not put their troops on ground. The other thing is that I'm looking at is under the Ukrainian constitution, there's no elections during the war.
Mm-hmm.
What if Putin is playing a game too, saying, okay, I'll do a peace agreement. I'll let him have this NATO security agreement. I'll take the lands. He gives me these lands. We end the war. Now there has to be elections. What's saying Putin isn't playing an end around to get his puppet guy in, and then you got somebody who leans to Russia.
I mean, Putin's not above trying to steal elections for sure. But now let me clarify something, though, Pearson. This is the most important point, is Donald Trump and Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, have both made it very clear that whatever happens in Ukraine will not be NATO. And it won't be NATO for exactly the reason that you're talking about, that an attack on one is an attack on all. It'll be a European agreement. It will be funding will be routed through NATO. The United States will provide air support, but it won't be a NATO peacekeeping mission. It'll be a European powers. It'll be a European Union event. And other allied powers. So, I mean, the practical reality is it'll mostly be the same countries that are involved in NATO, but there's a very specific difference between the two. Very specific difference between NATO and the European Union. And I personally think that that's probably the way to go with, of course, the United States providing air support, no boots on the ground from the United States. I mean, we'll essentially become, again, the arsenal of democracy. We'll provide them all the weapons and the training, and the Europeans will use the weapons on the ground. They will build a line for the Ukrainians along the border with the Russians on any territory ceded. They'll mine the snot out of it, so anti-personnel, anti-tank mines in the ground to make it harder for the Russians to cross, and there'll be lots of Patriot missile batteries. I got to tell you, the updates on the Patriot missile batteries, too, the president talked about that the other day with Zelensky at the White House. The newest updates from the Patriot missile batteries that have taken some of the Israeli Iron Dome technology into them, they are really, really impressive technology that Raytheon and others have developed for us, and it'll be in Ukraine. It's a very big deal. Now, when we come back, I'll keep taking your phone calls, but also Elon Musk appears, he made a big splash. He wanted that third party. He seems to be walking back his desire for a third party, which, given where we started the show with the date on the Democratic Party, is actually a smart thing. And I'll tell you why when we come back. There's no room for a third party in the United States, and the same data showing a Democratic decline shows that as well. Eric Erickson here, Nationwide.